The Great Hall of the Galactic Council stretched across 3 kilometers of polished crystal floor. Representatives from hundreds of worlds sat in their designated sections, each species protected by environmental shields suited to their biology. Some breathed methane, others required intense heat, and a few existed as pure energy contained within specialized chambers. Ambassador Dae-hyun sat in the human section, his dark suit simple compared to the elaborate garments worn by other diplomats. Beside him, his aide Hyun-woo quietly reviewed data on a transparent tablet. They had attended these council sessions for decades now, ever since humanity joined the galactic community 200 years ago. Most sessions were boring, filled with trade disputes and territorial negotiations that could put anyone to sleep. Today started no different. The council discussed mining rights in the Outer Rim, agricultural exports from farming worlds, and updates to the Universal Translation Protocols. Dae-hyun stifled a yawn and checked the agenda. Only one more item remained before they could leave. The speaker's platform rose from the floor, and an elderly Veltar shuffled forward. The Veltar were the galaxy's archivists, a species obsessed with preserving history. They had perfect memory, capable of recalling every detail they ever learned. This one wore the silver robes of an elder, and his 3 eyes blinked independently as he surveyed the assembly. "Honored delegates," the elder began. His voice translated instantly into hundreds of languages. "I am Thalmor, Senior Archivist of the Veltar Historical Preservation Society. Today I present our routine Millennium Review of Galactic Records." Dae-hyun settled back in his seat. Historical reviews were always dry. Hyun-woo actually closed his eyes, ready for a nap. Thalmor activated a holographic display showing a timeline of galactic history. Thousands of years scrolled past, marked with significant events. The formation of the Council, the Great Trade Wars, the Discovery Era when dozens of new species joined the galactic community. "As you can see," Thalmor continued, "our records are remarkably complete. However, we have identified several anomalies that require explanation." The timeline zoomed into a specific period, roughly 450 years ago. A section of the display glowed red. "During this 300-year period, we have significant gaps in our historical records. Multiple species that were previously documented simply cease to appear in any records. No final reports, no extinction events, no explanations. They simply vanish from history." Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Even Hyun-woo opened his eyes, suddenly alert. A younger Veltar approached the platform, her movements quick and nervous. Thalmor gestured for her to speak. "I am Rinza," she said, her voice uncertain but determined. "I have spent 20 years researching these gaps. I believe I have found evidence of a species that was deliberately erased from galactic memory." The murmurs grew louder. Several delegates activated their own displays, pulling up historical records. Dae-hyun remained perfectly still, his face showing polite interest and nothing more. But his hand gripped the armrest of his chair. Rinza expanded the hologram, showing star maps. "This region once belonged to a powerful empire called the Kravath. They controlled 42 star systems. They had advanced technology, a massive military fleet, and diplomatic relations with at least 30 other species. Then approximately 430 years ago, all mention of them stops. Every database, every historical text, every archaeological site. Gone. Perhaps they simply went extinct," suggested a delegate from the Tharn Collective, a species of crystalline beings. "Disease, war, natural disaster. Such things happen." "That was my first assumption," Rinza replied. "But extinction leaves evidence. Ruins, debris fields, records from other species documenting the event. The Kravath left nothing. More disturbing, species that traded with them have gaps in their own records during this exact period. It's as if someone carefully removed all evidence of the Kravath's existence." The council chamber fell silent. The concept of deliberately erasing a species from history was unthinkable to most of them. Genocide was bad enough, but to erase even the memory of a people? That suggested a level of systematic ruthlessness that most species couldn't comprehend. "What could do this?" asked another delegate. "What species has the capability and the motivation to erase an entire civilization from galactic memory?" Rinza hesitated. "That's what disturbs me most. Based on the timeline and the regions affected, only a handful of species had the necessary presence in that area of space during that period." She paused, her 3 eyes scanning the assembly. One of them was humanity. All eyes turned to the human section. Dae-hyun felt the weight of hundreds of stares but kept his expression neutral. Beside him, Hyunwoo sat frozen, barely breathing. Daehyun stood slowly, activating his platform's speaker system. The Veltar research is fascinating, he said calmly. However, I must point out that 430 years ago, humanity was barely spacefaring. We had only just established our first colonies outside our home system. We certainly didn't have the technology or the reach to affect events across 42 star systems. It was a good deflection, and technically true. 430 years ago, humanity was still new to space. What Daehyun didn't mention was what happened after that initial period. Thalmor nodded slowly. Ambassador Daehyun is correct. Humanity's early expansion was limited. However, the gaps in records extend across 300 years, not just the initial contact period. Still, Daehyun said smoothly, I think you'll find humanity was focused on survival and growth during that time, not on erasing other species from history. Perhaps the Veltar research will eventually reveal what truly happened to these Kravath. The session concluded shortly after, with the council agreeing to fund further investigation into the historical gaps. Delegates filed out of the chamber, chatting about the strange revelation. Most treated it as an interesting historical mystery, nothing more. Daehyun and Hyunwoo walked quickly toward their transport, saying nothing. They maintained professional smiles and nodded to other delegates, but their minds raced. They needed to contact Earth immediately. Ambassador Daehyun. They both turned. Rinza hurried toward them, a data device clutched in her hands. She looked around nervously, making sure no one else was close enough to hear. I apologize for the ambush in the session, she said quickly, but I needed other researchers to take this seriously. The evidence I have is limited, but it's compelling. I'm sure your research is thorough, Daehyun said diplomatically. But as I said, humanity was barely capable of interstellar travel during that period. I know what the official records say, Rinza interrupted. She activated her data device, showing a fragment of audio data. But I found this in a corrupted database at the edge of the former Kravath territory. It's a distress signal. The audio played, filled with static and interference. An alien voice screamed in a language the translator couldn't identify. Terror filled every syllable. Then, barely audible beneath the noise, came a response. The translator identified it immediately. Proto-human dialect, the early form of Earth's unified language. The message was simple, and delivered in a human voice. No mercy, no survivors, no memory. Rinza looked directly at Daehyun, her three eyes unblinking. What did your people do, Ambassador? Daehyun's calm expression never wavered, but inside alarm screamed. That recording shouldn't exist. Every database had been scrubbed, every signal erased, every witness dealt with. Someone had missed something. And now this young archivist had found a thread that could unravel the greatest secret humanity had ever kept. I have no idea what that recording means, Daehyun said carefully. Audio can be faked, mistranslated, or taken out of context. I'm sure there's a reasonable explanation. Then you won't mind if I visit Earth's historical archives? Rinza asked. I've applied for research access. I want to examine humanity's records from that period. Daehyun felt Hyunwoo tense beside him. They both knew what existed in those archives, buried in the deepest vaults, sealed behind security that hadn't been breached in 4 centuries, records that documented humanity's darkest hour and the terrible choice they made afterward. Of course, Daehyun said, his smile never faltering. Humanity has nothing to hide. I'll personally arrange your access to our historical archives. Rinza thanked him and hurried away, eager to begin her research. Daehyun and Hyunwoo watched her go, then quickly boarded their transport. As soon as the doors sealed, Hyunwoo spoke. We need to contact Earth immediately. She can't see those records. No, Daehyun said quietly. We can't stop her now without confirming her suspicions. If we deny access, every species in the galaxy will wonder what we're hiding. So what do? Daehyun stared out the viewport at the stars beyond. Somewhere out there, scattered across space, were 42 dead worlds. Planets that once held cities, farms, schools, and billions of living beings. Now they were empty, scrubbed clean, with nothing to indicate that the Kravath had ever existed. We let her look, Daehyun said finally, and we prepare for the consequences when she learns what humanity is truly capable of when someone makes us angry enough. Earth looked beautiful from orbit, a blue and green jewel hanging in the darkness of space. Rinza pressed her face against the viewport of the shuttle, her 3 eyes wide with wonder. She had studied hundreds of worlds, but Earth had a unique quality that made it special. Perhaps it was the abundance of water, or the diversity of life, or simply knowing that this world had produced one of the galaxy's most interesting species. The shuttle descended through the atmosphere, and soon the sprawling megacity of New Geneva came into view. It served as Earth's diplomatic capital, home to the unified humanity government and all major galactic embassies. The city gleamed with towers of glass and steel, connected by sky bridges and transportation tubes. At the spaceport, 2 humans waited for her. The woman was tall and severe, her gray hair pulled back tightly. She wore a formal uniform with numerous badges Rinza didn't recognize. The man beside her was older, his face lined with age despite humanity's life extension technology. He wore a military uniform, though no rank insignia marked his shoulders. "Researcher Rinza," the woman said, her tone professional but cold. "I am Jiwan, director of the Unified Archives. This is Admiral Boram, retired. We will be your escorts during your research." Rinza bowed in the human fashion which she had practiced. "Thank you for accommodating my request. I know this is unusual." "Unusual is an understatement," Jiwan replied. "No non-human has ever been granted access to our restricted archives. Ambassador Dae-hyun had to call in many favors to arrange this. I hope your research justifies the breach in protocol." They traveled in silence through the city, eventually reaching a building that looked different from the others. Where most structures were bright and open, this one was solid stone, windowless, and surrounded by multiple security checkpoints. Armed guards stood at every entrance, and Rinza noticed weapon systems hidden in the walls. "This is the Unified Archives," Jiwan explained. "We maintain both digital and physical records here. Most of our history is available publicly, but some materials remain classified for security reasons." They passed through 6 different security screenings. Each one scanned Rinza's biology, verified her identity, and checked for any recording devices. She had been warned to bring nothing electronic, not even her personal data tablet. Finally, they reached a vault door deep underground. G1 placed her hand on a scanner, spoke a long passphrase, and allowed a needle to prick her finger for a blood sample. The door opened with a heavy grinding sound, revealing a dark corridor beyond. "The records you're looking for are here," G1 said. "But I must warn you, Researcher Rinza. What you're about to see is disturbing. Some humans who work in these archives require psychological counseling afterward. Are you certain you want to continue?" Rinza felt her heart's beating faster. The Veltar were not easily frightened, but something about G1's tone made her nervous. Still, she had come too far to turn back now. "I must know the truth," she said firmly. The corridor led to a room filled with physical storage containers. No computers, no digital displays, just old-fashioned boxes and files. Admiral Boram began pulling specific containers, stacking them on a metal table in the center of the room. "We kept these records deliberately offline," he explained. "No network connection, no digital copies. What happened here is stored only in these physical files and in the memories of those who lived through it." He opened the first container and removed a folder marked with a date. Year 2387. The label read, "New Sol Colony, Final Report." Rinza opened the folder with trembling hands. Inside were photographs printed on actual paper. The first image showed a beautiful city with wide streets, parks filled with trees, and buildings that mixed Earth architecture with modern design. Humans of all ages filled the streets, smiling and going about their daily lives. The second photograph showed the same city burning. Buildings collapsed, streets littered with bodies, and smoke rising into a darkened sky. New Sol was humanity's first major colony outside our home system, Admiral Boram said, his voice flat and emotionless. "It took us 40 years to build. 2.3 million people called it home. It was our pride and joy. Proof that humanity could thrive among the stars." He placed another file on the table. "Then the Kravath found it?" Rinza read through the documents with growing horror. The Kravath Empire had been expanding aggressively during that period, claiming new territories and resources. When their scouts discovered New Sol, they saw a primitive species occupying a valuable world. The colony's governor, a man named Tae-young, tried to negotiate. He sent diplomatic messages, offered trade agreements, and even proposed sharing the planet's resources. The Kravath ignored every attempt at communication. "They didn't want to negotiate," Jiwan said bitterly. To them we were primitives, talking animals living on a planet they wanted. They gave us one message: evacuate or die. Governor Tae-young refused, Admiral Boram continued. New Seoul was our home. He believed that the Galactic Council would intervene, that other species would defend our right to exist. He was wrong. The attack began 3 days later. The Kravath fleet arrived without warning and immediately opened fire on the colony's orbital stations. Within hours, they had destroyed all defensive installations and established orbital superiority. Then, the ground assault began. Rinza found video recordings among the files, stored on ancient physical media. Jiwon set up an old player and activated it. The screen showed footage from security cameras throughout New Seoul. The images were nightmare fuel. Kravath soldiers moved through the streets shooting any humans they encountered. But it wasn't just quick execution. The recordings showed them hunting civilians for sport, laughing as humans ran in terror. They set buildings on fire while people were still inside. They used children as slave labor, forcing them to carry supplies while beating them for moving too slowly. One recording showed a school. Kravath soldiers herded teachers and students into the auditorium, then sealed the doors and set it ablaze. The screams lasted for 20 minutes. Rinza felt sick. Her species had perfect memory, which meant she would never forget these images. They would stay with her forever, perfect and clear no matter how much she wished to forget. The assault lasted 3 days, Admiral Boram said. New Seoul had some security forces, but they were equipped for policing, not military combat. They fought bravely and died to the last soldier, buying time for civilians to hide. Some humans managed to escape, Jiwon added. 47 people made it to a hidden shuttle and fled the planet before the Kravath found them. They brought these recordings with them. They wanted the rest of humanity to know what happened. She placed another file on the table. Among the survivors was a teacher named Young Mi. She wrote this testimony. Rinza read the handwritten document and her heart broke. Young Mi described watching the Kravath execute her husband, then her 2 children, forcing her to watch before leaving her alive. She survived only because a security guard pulled her into a maintenance tunnel as the Kravath searched the area. Why? Young Mai had written. Why did they do this? What did we do to deserve such cruelty? We only wanted to live in peace. The 47 survivors were brought to Earth, Admiral Boram continued. Their testimonies were broadcast to every human alive. We made sure everyone saw what the Kravath had done. Every man, woman, and child on Earth and all our other colonies watched the recordings. He pulled out another file. This one marked military response authorization. Admiral Seok-jin commanded Earth's defense fleet at the time. We had maybe 50 warships designed for exploration and light patrol duty. The Kravath had thousands of military vessels, battle-tested and powerful. By every logical calculation, we couldn't win a war against them. But logic doesn't account for human rage, Jiwon said quietly. The file contained Admiral Seok-jin's address to the unified Earth government. Rinza read it carefully, noting how the tone shifted from grief to cold determination. We are outnumbered, Seok-jin had written. We are outgunned. Our technology is inferior. By all reasonable measures, attempting military retaliation would be suicide. The Kravath expect us to surrender, to plead for mercy, to accept their dominance. They have made a fundamental miscalculation. They believe that because we are new to the galaxy, we are weak. They believe that because we prefer peace, we are incapable of war. They believe that because we are outnumbered, we will submit. They are wrong. The Kravath have awakened something in humanity that we hoped would never be necessary. They have reminded us what we are truly capable of when survival demands it. They want our extinction. We will give them theirs. Rinza looked up from the document, her 3 eyes wide. What did you do? Admiral Boram smiled, but there was no warmth in it. We mobilized. Every industrial facility on Earth and all our colonies was converted to military production. Every scientist focused on weapons development. Every resource was dedicated to building a war machine capable of destroying the Kravath Empire. But that would take years, Rinza protested. Decades even. How did you? We had time, Jiwon interrupted. Because the Kravath didn't take us seriously. They destroyed New Seoul and then ignored us, focusing on... Admiral Boram opened another container, this one larger and filled with multiple folders organized by date. The label on the container read, War Operations 23872390. Maximum Classification. After New Sol fell, Earth had a choice, he began, spreading files across the table. We could surrender, flee to other parts of the galaxy, or fight back against an empire that vastly outnumbered us. Most species would have chosen survival over revenge. Humanity chose both, Jiwan added. We would survive by ensuring the Krevoth couldn't threaten us ever again. Rinza picked up the first folder, marked Industrial Mobilization, Phase 1. Inside were production reports that made her three eyes widen in shock. Within 6 months of New Sol's destruction, Earth had converted every major factory to military production. Automobile plants built tanks. Electronics manufacturers produced targeting systems. Shipyards that once constructed civilian vessels now churned out warships. The entire human economy shifted overnight, Admiral Boram explained. Every person on Earth understood what was at stake. Workers volunteered for triple shifts. Scientists abandoned their personal research to focus on weapons development. Children collected scrap metal for recycling into ship hulls. One document caught Rinza's attention. It was a production report from Dr. J. He, listed as Chief Scientist of the Emergency Weapons Development Program. The report detailed how human scientists had studied the wreckage of Krevoth ships from the New Sol attack. We didn't just copy their technology, Admiral Boram said with grim pride. Dr. Jahi's team reverse-engineered it, found the weaknesses, and improved it. Within 8 months, our weapons were more efficient than theirs. Rinza read the technical specifications with growing amazement. The humans had taken Krevoth plasma weapons and modified them to fire faster with better accuracy. They had studied Krevoth armor and developed ammunition specifically designed to penetrate it. They had analyzed Krevoth shield generators and created disruptors that could collapse them. But weapons alone don't win wars, Jiwan said. She placed another file on the table. This is Captain Minho's mission log. He commanded our first stealth frigate. The mission logs detailed reconnaissance operations that seemed impossible. Captain Minho and his crew had infiltrated deep into Krevoth territory, mapping their military installations, supply routes, and defensive positions. They spent months gathering intelligence while completely undetected. The Krevoth never knew we were there, Admiral Boram said. Their sensors couldn't detect our stealth ships. We learned everything about them while they learned nothing about us. Rinza flipped through page after page of detailed maps and reports. The humans had cataloged every Krevoth military base, every shipyard, every command center. They knew the exact location of ammunition depots, fuel storage facilities, and command bunkers. It was intelligence gathering on a scale that would have taken most species decades to accomplish. The Krevoth made a critical mistake, Jiwan explained. They ignored our early attacks. We destroyed 3 of their outposts in the first year, and they dismissed it as insignificant. They couldn't believe that primitive humans posed a real threat. Admiral Boram pulled out a tactical analysis written by Commander Unji. The document outlined something called the Silent Protocol. Commander Unji understood that we couldn't just fight the Krevoth militarily, Admiral Boram said. We needed to isolate them completely. The Silent Protocol was a doctrine of total information warfare. Rinza read through the protocol with growing horror. It wasn't just about fighting. It was about making sure the Krevoth died alone, with no one to help them or even witness their destruction. Every Krevoth communication was jammed, Jiwan explained. Every distress signal was blocked. Every attempt to contact their allies was intercepted and deleted. When they tried to call for help, silence answered. The protocol went further. Human intelligence operatives infiltrated Krevoth diplomatic channels and sent false messages to their allies. They made it appear that the Krevoth were isolating themselves voluntarily, pursuing some secret project that required radio silence. Their allies thought they were being deliberately ignored, Admiral Boram said. By the time anyone realized something was wrong, it was too late. Rinza found battle reports from the early conflicts. The humans fought with a precision that seemed impossible for a species so new to interstellar warfare. They struck supply lines, destroyed communication satellites, and eliminated key command personnel in surgical strikes. We learned quickly, Admiral Boram admitted. Every battle taught us something. Every Krevoth tactic we encountered, we adapted to and countered. Within 2 years, we were outfighting them despite their technological advantages. But the true turning point came in a file marked Battle of Krevar Prime, Final Assault. Krevar Prime was the Krevoth homeworld, The heart of their empire. It was heavily defended with thousands of ships, planetary shields, and ground-based weapons platforms. Attacking it should have been suicide. Fleet Admiral Sang Woo's report detailed the assault plan. Rinza read it 3 times, unable to believe what she was seeing. "We committed 300 ships to the attack," Admiral Boram said quietly. "The Kravath defending fleet numbered 800. On paper, we should have been annihilated. What happened?" Rinza asked, though part of her already knew the answer. "The battle lasted 4 hours," Jiwan replied. "We lost 89 ships and nearly 30,000 personnel. But the Kravath lost everything." The tactical analysis showed a level of coordination and strategic thinking that impressed even Rinza's analytical mind. The human fleet had divided into strike groups, each with a specific target. They didn't try to fight the entire Kravath fleet at once. Instead, they used the silent protocol to jam communications, preventing the defenders from coordinating. One strike group targeted the planetary shields. Another focused on orbital weapons platforms. A third engaged the defending fleet, while a fourth slipped through the chaos to drop assault forces on the planet's surface. "We had studied their defensive doctrine for months," Admiral Boram explained. "We knew exactly how they would respond to each threat. Every move they made we had anticipated and prepared for." A recording from the battle showed the human fleet moving with mechanical precision. Ships darted between Kravath vessels, firing with devastating accuracy. When Kravath ships tried to regroup, they found human vessels already in position to intercept them. One audio log came from a pilot named Haiwan. Her voice was calm despite the chaos around her. "This is for New Sol," she said as her fighter dove toward a Kravath cruiser. "This is for every child they murdered, every family they destroyed. They wanted to make us extinct. We're showing them what extinction really looks like." The battle ended with the complete destruction of the Kravath defending fleet. Their planetary shields collapsed. Their weapons platforms went silent. The homeworld lay defenseless. "We gave them one chance to surrender," Admiral Boram said softly. Fleet Admiral Sang Woo broadcast on all frequencies. He told them to evacuate the planet, that we would show mercy to non-combatants. "Did they surrender?" Rinza asked, though something told her she didn't want to know the answer. "The Kravath military leadership refused," Jiwan replied. "They broadcast their own message, mocking us. They said humanity was too weak to do what was necessary. They said we would negotiate, show mercy, and they would rebuild and finish what they started." Admiral Boram pulled out one final document from the battle reports. It was Fleet Admiral Sang Woo's final order to his fleet. No mercy. No survivors. No memory. The same phrase from the distress signal Rinza had discovered. Now she understood what it meant. "We didn't just destroy their military," Admiral Boram said, his voice devoid of emotion. "We destroyed everything. Every city, every installation, every trace of civilization on their homeworld. We made Kravar Prime a dead rock floating in space." But Rinza noticed something in the files. The Battle of Kravar Prime happened in 2390, 3 years after New Sol's destruction. Yet the gaps in galactic records extended for 300 years after that. "This was just the beginning, wasn't it?" she asked quietly. Jiwan and Admiral Boram nodded slowly. "The battle was the easy part," Jiwan said. "Destroying their military, conquering their worlds, that was conventional warfare. What came next was something different. Something that no species in galactic history had ever attempted." Admiral Boram opened another container. This one marked Operation Forgotten, Complete Erasure Protocol. "After we destroyed their military power, we made a decision," he said. "The Kravath had shown us what they were capable of. They had demonstrated that they would never stop, never show mercy, never accept our right to exist. So we decided that they wouldn't get the chance to threaten anyone ever again. We decided to erase them from history itself," Jiwan finished. Rinza stared at the new files with a mixture of fascination and horror. She had come to Earth looking for the truth about the Kravath's disappearance. Now she was about to learn exactly how humanity had accomplished the impossible, making an entire civilization vanish so completely that the galaxy forgot they ever existed. "Show me," she whispered. "Show me how you erased an entire species from galactic memory." The files for Operation Forgotten filled 3 entire containers. As Admiral Boram spread them across the table, Rinza realized she was looking at the most comprehensive and disturbing plan she had ever seen. This wasn't just military strategy. It was systematic erasure on a scale that seemed impossible. Director Sujin oversaw the entire operation, Ji-won explained, pointing to a personnel file. The woman in the photograph looked ordinary, middle-aged with kind eyes. She worked for our diplomatic intelligence service before the war. After New Seoul, she volunteered to lead what would become the most classified project in human history. Rinza opened Director Sujin's planning document. The operation was divided into 4 phases, each designed to eliminate a specific aspect of Kravath existence. Phase 1 was called Physical Erasure, Admiral Boram said, opening a folder filled with engineering reports. We didn't just destroy the Kravath. We erased every physical trace that they ever existed. The reports detailed an operation that took 15 years to complete. Teams of specialists visited all 42 former Kravath worlds, armed with technology that seemed designed for one purpose: absolute destruction. Agent Kyung-soo led the demolition teams. His reports were clinical and precise, describing the systematic dismantling of Kravath civilization. They used advanced nanotechnology, microscopic machines that could break down matter at the molecular level. We didn't just knock down buildings, Admiral Boram explained. We erased them completely. Every structure, every monument, every archaeological site. The nanomachines consumed everything and left no trace behind. One report described the demolition of the Grand Archive on Kravar Prime, a massive library that had stood for thousands of years. It took 3 months to completely dismantle. When the teams finished, not even the foundation remained. What about bodies? Rinza asked, though she dreaded the answer. Cremated and scattered, Ji-won replied flatly. Every Kravath corpse, every grave, every burial site. We made sure no future archaeologist could ever find Kravath remains. The thoroughness was staggering. The teams even removed Kravath DNA from soil samples, water supplies, and atmospheric particles. Within 3 years, forensic analysis of the former Kravath worlds showed no evidence that any intelligent species had ever lived there. But physical erasure was only the beginning, Admiral Boram said, opening the next folder. Phase 2 was digital erasure. This phase targeted something even more challenging: the vast networks of galactic information. Every species maintained databases, historical records, and communication archives. Somewhere in those systems, mentions of the Kravath existed. Cyber specialist Dayun commanded teams of hackers and AI programmers. Her mission was simple but incredibly complex: find and modify every digital record that mentioned the Kravath. We couldn't just delete the records, Ji-won explained. That would leave obvious gaps that historians would notice. Instead, we had to rewrite history seamlessly. The operation's scope was breathtaking. Dayun's teams infiltrated over 300 major galactic databases, including the Galactic Council's main historical archive. They worked carefully, spending years mapping connections and relationships before making any changes. We developed AI specifically for this task, Admiral Boram said, showing Rinza technical specifications created by Dr. Chan Young. The AI could analyze historical records, identify mentions of the Kravath, and generate plausible replacements that maintained historical consistency. For example, trade records that showed the Kravath exporting minerals were modified to show those exports coming from other species in nearby regions. Treaties signed with the Kravath were altered to show agreements with different civilizations. Battle reports mentioning Kravath ships were changed to reference pirate fleets or minor conflicts. The AI was brilliant, Ji-won admitted. It understood context, maintained consistency across multiple databases, and even adjusted the writing style to match the original records. Most of the changes were so subtle that even the species who wrote the original records wouldn't notice the alterations. Rinza felt sick. She was a historian, dedicated to preserving truth. The idea of systematically falsifying records on this scale violated everything she believed in. How did you access the Galactic Council's archives? She asked. Their security is supposed to be impenetrable. Admiral Boram smiled grimly. We had decades to plan and unlimited resources. There's no such thing as impenetrable security when a motivated intelligence service has enough time and determination. The report showed that the Council's archives were breached through a combination of social engineering, hardware implants, and extremely patient infiltration. It took 8 years just to gain the necessary access, then another 5 to make all the modifications without being detected. Phase 3 was the darkest part, Ji-won said quietly, opening the next folder. The label read, Witness elimination. Rinza's heart sank as she realized what that meant. Physical and digital erasure couldn't account for living memory, Admiral Boram explained. Hundreds of species had direct contact with the Kravath. Individuals who had met them, traded with them, fought against them. Those memories couldn't be altered through hacking or demolition. The files detailed a chilling campaign. Interrogator Wanshik led teams that identified every species with significant knowledge of the Kravath. Then they made contact and offered two choices. We approached each species diplomatically at first, Jiwan said. We explained that the Kravath had been eliminated for their crimes against humanity. We showed them evidence of what happened at New Sol. Then we made our offer. The offer was simple: accept voluntary memory modification or face alternative solutions. Memory modification? Rinza asked. Advanced neural technology that could remove specific memories while leaving everything else intact, Admiral Boram explained. We had developed it originally for treating trauma victims. Soldiers who couldn't cope with battle stress could have those memories removed while retaining their skills and other experiences. 11 species accepted the memory modification voluntarily after seeing what humanity was capable of. Medical teams visited their worlds and carefully removed memories related to the Kravath. The process left the individuals healthy but unable to recall any interactions with the extinct species. And the 12th species? Rinza asked, though she feared the answer. The Mathari refused, Jiwan said. They were a proud species with strong principles about memory and identity. They considered memory modification a violation of their fundamental nature. Medical Officer Juwan's report made Rinza's blood run cold. A plague struck the Mathari homeworld 6 months after they refused the offer. It spread rapidly, causing severe neurological damage. The survivors suffered complete amnesia, unable to remember anything from before the illness. The pathogen was genetically tailored to affect only Mathari biology, Admiral Boram said quietly. It targeted specific neural structures responsible for long-term memory formation and storage. Within 3 months, the entire species had lost their memories of the Kravath, along with much of their other history. You created a biological weapon that caused amnesia? Rinza could barely speak. We gave them a choice, Jiwan replied, her voice hard. They chose to keep their memories. We made sure those memories disappeared anyway. The operation required that no witnesses remain. Rinza realized the full horror of what humanity had done. They hadn't just defeated their enemy. They had systematically eliminated every possible way the Kravath could be remembered, including attacking innocent species who simply had the misfortune of knowing the wrong information. Phase 4 was called Narrative Replacement, Admiral Boram continued. Opening the final folder. This phase involved creating a new version of history that explained the gaps left by the Kravath's removal. Historian Inho led a team of scholars and storytellers who crafted a comprehensive alternative timeline. We couldn't just leave blank spaces in history, Jiwan explained. That would raise questions. Instead, we created a plausible narrative that filled those gaps seamlessly. The new history attributed the space once controlled by the Kravath to natural expansion by neighboring species. Trade routes were explained as always having existed in their current form. Resources that the Kravath had controlled were presented as newly discovered deposits. The most audacious part was explaining the data corruption. Historian Inho created evidence of a massive solar event that had occurred 400 years ago. This fictional event supposedly caused electromagnetic disruptions across multiple sectors, corrupting databases and destroying records. We even planted fake archaeological evidence of the solar event, Admiral Boram said. Radiation signatures in specific stellar formations, damaged equipment with the right kind of electromagnetic scarring. Scientists studying the region confirmed our invented event because all the evidence pointed to it. Within 50 years, the new narrative was completely accepted. History books taught about the great data corruption. Species whose memories had been altered told stories that matched the modified timeline. The gap in records became an accepted historical quirk, explained and understood. No one remembered the Kravath. Rinza spent 3 sleepless nights in her quarters at the human embassy, reviewing everything she had learned. Her perfect Veltar memory meant she could recall every document, every image, every horrifying detail with absolute clarity. She wished desperately that she could forget, but her species didn't work that way. The truth weighed on her like a physical burden. Humanity, the friendly species that had joined the Galactic Council 2 centuries ago, had committed the most thorough act of erasure in galactic history. They had eliminated an entire civilization and then made the galaxy forget it ever happened. But they had also been victims first. The images from New Sol haunted her thoughts: children burning in schools, families executed for sport, an entire colony slaughtered because the Kravath saw humans as primitives unworthy of life. On the 4th morning, Ambassador Daehyun visited her quarters. He carried a data tablet and looked tired, as if he hadn't slept much either. "The council has been asking about your research," he said, sitting across from her. "They're curious about your findings. What will you tell them?" Rinza had been wrestling with exactly that question. As a historian, her duty was to preserve and share truth. But this truth had the power to change everything the galaxy believed about humanity. "I don't know," she admitted. "What you showed me changes everything. But I'm not sure the galaxy is ready to know what humans are truly capable of." Daehyun activated his tablet, showing her recent news from the council. The Zarn Collective, a militaristic species known for aggressive expansion, had been making threats toward human colonies. They saw humanity as peaceful traitors, easy targets for intimidation. "This is what happens when the galaxy thinks we're weak," Daehyun said quietly. "Species like the Zarn believe they can push us around because we prefer diplomacy to violence. They mistake our choice for peace as an inability to fight." "The Kravath made the same mistake," Rinza observed. "Exactly. And look what happened to them." Rinza spent the next week writing her report. She crafted it carefully, aware that every word would be scrutinized by historians across the galaxy. Her findings would either expose humanity's darkest secret or protect it for another few centuries. Meanwhile, events at the Galactic Council were escalating. The Zarn Collective had attacked a human supply convoy, killing 200 civilians. They claimed it was an accident, but everyone knew it was deliberate intimidation. The council held an emergency session. Rinza attended, sitting in the observer section alongside Jiwon and Admiral Boram. The chamber buzzed with tension as delegates argued about appropriate responses and diplomatic sanctions. Then Ambassador Daehyun requested the floor. The chamber fell silent as he stood, his expression calm but his voice carrying an edge that made Rinza's skin prickle. "Honored delegates," he began, "humanity has been a member of this council for 200 years. In that time, we have been peaceful neighbors, fair traders, and reliable allies. We have resolved disputes through negotiation, supported galactic laws, and contributed to the prosperity of all species." He paused, letting his words sink in. "But some species have mistaken our preference for peace as a weakness. The Zarn Collective has been threatening our colonies, pushing boundaries, and now they have killed our civilians." The Zarn delegate, a large reptilian creature named Krath, stood. "It was an accident. Our ships didn't intend—" "Silence," Daehyun said, his voice suddenly cold. "You will listen." The command in his tone shocked the chamber. This wasn't the friendly diplomat they knew. This was something else entirely. The Zarn believe we will negotiate endlessly, plead for justice, or quietly accept their aggression. They believe that because we choose peace, we cannot wage war. Daehyun's eyes swept across the assembly. "They are wrong." He activated a holographic display. Rinza's heart stopped as she recognized the footage. Images from Operation Forgotten appeared on the screen. Burning Kravath cities, ships shattering in space, worlds going dark one by one. 400 years ago, a species called the Kravath made the same assumption. They attacked one of our colonies. They murdered 2.3 million humans. They hunted our children for sport. The chamber erupted in shocked murmurs. No one had heard of the Kravath. The name meant nothing to anyone except Rinza and a handful of humans. "We gave them one chance to stop," Daehyun continued. "They refused. They promised to exterminate humanity completely, so we made a different choice." The footage showed the systematic destruction of Kravath civilization. Fleet battles, orbital bombardments, cities being dismantled at the molecular level. The images were clinical, efficient, and absolutely terrifying. "We didn't just defeat them," Daehyun said softly. "We erased them. Every ship, every colony, every trace of their existence. And then we went further. We erased them from galactic memory itself. We modified databases, altered records, and eliminated witnesses. We made it so that no one would ever remember they existed." He let that sink in. "Right now, you're seeing footage of a species that none of you have ever heard of. a species that once controlled 42 star systems and had diplomatic relations with dozens of civilizations. You don't remember them because we made you forget. The chamber was completely silent. Even the Zarn delegate looked shaken. This is what humanity is capable of when pushed beyond mercy, Daehyun said. We have spent 4 centuries trying to be better than what we were forced to become. We chose peace because we know the cost of total war, but never ever mistake that choice for inability. He looked directly at the Zarn delegate. You attacked our civilians. You threatened our colonies. You believed we would be too weak to respond. I am authorized to deliver one final warning. Withdraw all hostile actions immediately, or discover firsthand what happened to the last species that made humanity truly angry. Krath. The Zarn delegate tried to speak, but no words came out. The threat was clear and backed by evidence that couldn't be dismissed. Humanity had demonstrated not just the ability to wage war, but the capability to erase civilization so thoroughly that even their memory vanished. Within hours, the Zarn Collective issued a formal apology. They withdrew all military forces from human space, offered substantial reparations for the convoy attack, and requested a peace treaty. The speed of their capitulation shocked everyone except those who understood what they had seen. After the session, Rinsa found Ambassador Daehyun in a private meeting room. He looked exhausted, the weight of revealed secrets visible on his face. You knew I would investigate, she said. It wasn't a question. We knew someone would eventually, Daehyun admitted. That audio recording you found wasn't an accident. We left it deliberately, a single thread in case we ever needed to demonstrate the truth. When you found it, we made a decision to let you see everything. You used my research as a weapon, Rinsa realized. You showed me the truth knowing I would struggle with what to do, buying time until you needed to reveal it yourself. Not quite, Daehyun said. We gave you the truth because we respect honest scholarship. What we did to the Krivoth needed to be documented by someone outside humanity. Your report will be the galaxy's only objective account of those events. Rinsa understood now. Humanity couldn't reveal its own dark history without appearing to boast or threaten, but a respected alien historian discovering the truth? That carried weight and credibility. The choice is still yours, Daehyun continued. You can publish everything you learned, expose our actions to the entire galaxy, or you can seal your findings, protecting the secret for another era. Rinsa had already made her decision. She returned to her quarters and finalized her report. She submitted it to the Council archives with a classification level that would keep it sealed for 1,000 years. Her public findings concluded that the Krivoth were destroyed by internal conflicts and natural disasters, with records lost to documented data corruption. But she added one critical modification, a conditional release protocol. If any species ever attempted genocide against humans again, the files would automatically declassify and broadcast across the entire galaxy. Future aggressors would know exactly what humanity was capable of before making fatal mistakes. Her final note in the classified section read, Humanity is not defined by what they did to the Krivoth. They are defined by what they chose not to become afterward. They weaponized mercy by choosing peace despite possessing the tools for absolute war. This makes them not the most dangerous species in the galaxy, but perhaps the most terrifying. A species that knows exactly how to erase you from existence and chooses not to. May we all learn from both their fury and their restraint. Before leaving Earth, Rinsa visited the Memorial Hall in New Geneva. A wall displayed the names of all 2.3 million humans who died on New Sol. She stood before it for an hour, reading names and remembering faces from the photographs she had seen. A young human girl approached, maybe 10 years old, holding her grandfather's hand. The old man wore a military uniform with no rank markings. Rinsa recognized Admiral Boram. Grandfather, the girl asked, are humans really peaceful? Boram knelt beside her, his weathered face kind but serious. We are,